Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Drums and Drams. My name is Cameron, and today we have another episode of Quick Sips. Now, I've got to say, I'm really excited about today's episode. I get to taste the coveted George T. Stagg from the 2020 Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, courtesy of Dave R., an incredibly generous viewer and supporter in the WhiskeyTube community. So thank you, Dave, for sending along this sample. It's the first of the 2020 BTAC collection that I've had a chance to try. And to be totally honest with you guys, I am not super familiar with a lot of the BTAC bottles. I've had a couple of different pours here and there over the years, but honestly, I've never owned any of the BTAC stuff. I'm not willing to pay secondary for it. So anytime I get to try this, it is a real treat. So I'm very excited, like I said, about this review. I'm gonna start off by tasting the George T. Stagg. I'm gonna give it a review, and then I'm gonna compare it next to Stagg Jr. Batch 12, which is widely regarded as the best release in the Stagg Jr. line of the 15 batches. People really love that batch 12. So much so that in the last month, these secondary prices have climbed an incredible amount, and we are well over $250 per bottle now. When Stagg Jr. Batch 12 was released on the market, people compared it to that year's George T. Stagg, and so I think this is going to be an interesting comparison. But before we get there, let's start off with this George T. Stagg. I already have it poured out here. It is coming in at 130.4 proof, 65.2% ABV. So let's check this out on the nose and see what we get. So right away, you get two distinct things. Number one is this sort of menthol or minty characteristic that kind of delivers a little bit of an ethanol punch. It really crawls up your nose. But right behind that is an incredible amount of rich, sticky sweetness. You get a lot of flat cherry cola on the nose here, a lot of those standard candied grape type notes that you get from higher proof and older or higher quality Buffalo Trace products, really. Yeah, just a great combination of those two things. You get a little bit of woodiness in here, almost like a little bit of dry oak, dry but sweet oak. There's nothing funky, nothing super tannic about that oak. I don't know how Buffalo Trace manages to keep their older bourbons sweet and not, get too funky with that oak characteristic there. This is 15 months and 4 years. Geez, I messed that up. 15 years and 4 months old. And so at that age, I don't know how they can maintain the sweetness in the oak. Get a little bit of a tobacco note going on in there. Really nice. Yeah, some vanilla. So overall, it's mostly a very rich, candy sweet type nose with some added pops of, again, that minty menthol type thing. A little bit of woodiness, a little bit of tobacco. Overall, an extremely pleasant nose. So let's try it on the palate now. Cheers. Oh. Wow, that is so delicious. What's awesome about this is right up front, you don't get popped with really like a sharp pepper note or any of that mintiness. Right away, you just get this flood of extremely syrupy and viscous sweetness. All of the dark cherry notes, that flat cherry cola thing I talked about, as well as that candied grape, that really rushes in right away on the front of the palate. And as that sweetness develops, the spice starts to come along for the ride, and then the spice is what carries you into the back palate into the finish. So a lot of times with some younger bourbons, I tend to get the spice pop up front, and then the sweetness rushes in behind it. This is reversed. Sweetness up front, extremely decadent, viscous. Then the spice comes along and helps deliver an incredible development into the finish. And the finish right now, yeah, it's really lingering in the palate as well as in the throat. The spice lingers in the back of the throat, a little bit of that dry woodiness. But in the front of the mouth here, you're getting a lot of those sweet, candied, dark fruit type notes. So really wonderful there. I'm going to put this down now, and I'm going to pick up my Stagg Jr. Batch 12, which is about 1% higher ABV, so almost identical. The only difference here, obviously, is the age. The Stagg Jr. is going to be, I don't know, between like 8 and 9 years younger generally, or maybe, I don't know, let's say 7 to 8 years younger, something like that. But yeah, Stagg Jr. Batch 12. Let's see what we get here on the nose. Yeah, this comes in a little bit more ethanol forward. There's a less sort of roundness on the nose, a little bit sharper, but actually a lot of the characteristics are very, very similar. Yeah, you get that grape, especially here, a little bit less of the flat cherry cola. I think that note, as well as the sort of viscosity and just syrupiness of the George T. Stagg, a little bit of that is lost here. But yeah, all in all, very, very similar. I actually get a little bit more green rye spice on the Stagg Jr. with that youth. So let's do it side by side now. Stagg Jr., George T. Yeah, the George T, you get a little bit more, like I said, of that dry woodiness, the dry oak, that sweet tobacco type note. It's a little more round, but honestly, these are very, very comparable. So I'm going to try the Stagg Jr. on the palate now. Those are darn close. The Stagg Jr. doesn't quite hit the front of the palate the same way. That's a little bit more spice driven up front in the taste. Like I said, the George T is almost the reverse of a lot of these younger bourbons, but all in all, these are very similar. I would not pay secondary prices for a George T Stagg. You know, they're about $700 plus now. In this Stagg Jr., going for about $250 plus on the secondary market. So I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're going to pick one of these, I would go with the Stagg Jr., to be honest with you. I don't want to pay secondary, but if I had to pay secondary for either one of these, I would go with that Stagg Jr. because it's really freaking close to the George T Stagg. And if you don't have them side by side, I don't think you would really miss as much of the George T Stagg as you might think. It is a great pour, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's really wonderful, but I would say it's 15 to 20% better than the Stagg Jr. And that price differential doesn't really, I don't know, it doesn't really do it for me. So either way, these are both incredible pours. Again, thank you, Dave, for sending along the George T Stagg. I was very curious to put it next to this Stagg Jr. It's a pretty cool comparison if you guys get a chance to do it, but I can totally see why there is some hype around that Stagg Jr. Batch 12. So that's all I've got for today's video. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification button if you want to know when I'm going live at least once a week and when new content is coming out. And if you enjoy what you're seeing from Drums and Drams, consider joining the Patreon. There's a tier for everybody, a lot of different options there. You get some behind-the-scenes exclusive content, and you get to help support the channel as well. Next up on Quick Sips, I'm going to be tasting 1792 12-year, which is an expression from 1792 that I've never had before, and I'm very excited about that. So be on the lookout for the next Quick Sip with that 1792. But until next time, I will see you later. Cheers from Drums and Drams.